So welcome again. In this lesson, we are going to design our view controller for our main view controller, the lists view controller. It has to be something similar to this. I'm showing you the final result first, and then I'm going to quickly develop it for you. There is a button at the very top. There is a table view with a slightly larger table view cell, and there is a button at the very bottom that says login. So that's essentially what we're going to do, and it's actually quite simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this view controller completely. So my storyboard currently has no view controller at all. So then I'm going to go up here and add a new view controller. So this is my new view controller. In my newly created view controller, I'm going to add a button. So that's a button. And this button, I'm going to actually place it in somewhere quite specific numerically. I'm going to say X is 0, Y is 20. And if by any chance you don't see the properties, that is view paths properties. And if you don't see the document outline, that is view paths documents outline. So that's about that. So 0, 20, 375, because that's the size of an iPhone 6. And if you're not sure about that, just click on the view and it will show it to you. And then the other side is 64 for the height. Then I'm going to go to the widget, that's like the properties. I'm going to say this one says plus new list. So it adds a new list. Maybe it's a little bit larger, such as that. Its text color is actually yellow. So something like that. And its background color is purple. So something like this. Then I'm going to go ahead and add another button. So that's a button I'm going to put in here at the very far bottom. And this button is going to be again 375, 64 height. And I'm going to manually place it there. Perfect. And this one actually says login. So it says login. And maybe its text color is black. Maybe it's a little bit larger. And its background color is orange color. So background color is going to be orange. Perfect. So that's the two that I have so far. Then I'm going to add a table view between these two. So I'm going to go ahead and say this one is a table view here. If I find it, perfect, table view. And my table view is perfectly aligned up there. So that up there is essentially 0 and 84 because we have 20 pixels for the status bar and then another 64. And then the width is 375 and the height of it is 519. If you're wondering where that number comes from, it's actually a very simple calculation. The total height of my view is 667. So 667 minus 20 pixels for the status bar, minus 64 for this button, and minus 64 for another button. So the total that's left is 519. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my table view. And in my table view, I'm going to go to layout, choose row height, not to be automatic, and I'm going to make it 128. So it is a larger cell. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the cell itself. And the cell, I'm going to say it is subtitle. So we can see the title and the subtitle in there. And then that's about that. So we have our button, we have our table view, and we have our login button. The next thing I should do with each of them is I have to essentially give them a name. Now, if you're coming from the background of Xcode, this is a slightly different in here. In Xcode, you don't really have to name your outlets. In Xamarin Studio, you have to name them. So that is the name that you will be able to use in your view controller. So this one, the new list, I'm actually going to call it new list button. That's simple. This one, the table view, I'm actually going to call it grocery list table view. All right. And the final button in here, this is the button that's going to use us to log in, register, or log out. So it does several different things. So I'm going to actually call this one profile button. So that's the button that handles our profile stuff. And that's about that. By now we have a new view controller that has all the elements that we want. We don't have a class for our view controller. Right now it is not connected to anyone. So I actually want a new view controller for it. So you could either add that through file, new file, or you could just go up here and write the name that you want. I'm going to say this is lists view controller. And watch what happens when I hit enter. It adds a new view controller in here. So I'm going to say enter. And now we have something called lists view controller that is connected to this interface view controller. So that's about that. I'm going to delete my view controller. I don't need the old one anymore. And if we go to our lists view controller, it has everything like any usual view controller except for the view did load. So I'm actually going to do this. Say public override void view did load, and in it I'm going to say base dot view did load, and that's about that. So if we run our application now, this view controller will be loaded. And the reason I know that is simply because this view controller is the initial view controller. So that if you don't have it by any chance, if you accidentally deleted it, you can just select your view controller and say is initial view controller. Let's run this application now. Once the simulator loads up, we should be able to see this, which is our application, a new list button that doesn't really do anything, a login button that doesn't do anything, and a table view that we can actually scroll. But of course, it doesn't have any items in it just yet. Now that these are all working, I want to connect my two buttons to my list view controller. So doing that in Xamarin is actually quite easy. What you do is you just go to your button and you double click on it, and it will come to your view controller and it will ask you where do you want to paste it. So I'm just gonna use the up and down buttons, arrow keys, and I'm gonna place one of them in here. So new list button touch up inside. This is the method for it, which we haven't really done anything for it, of course, yet. Then I'm going to go to the storyboard and do the same thing with my profile button. So I'm going to double click on that and use the arrow buttons to come down. And in here, profile button touch up inside. So that's about that. By now we have our new list and profile buttons both connected to two functions in our list view controller. What they're actually going to do is something that we will do over the next several lessons. So that's about that. Let's keep it up to here and we'll move on.